looks good over on our streaming broadcast tonight. Some of you know we had some technical difficulties last week. We posted a recording of last week's Making Bird Connections lecture on our Hog Island Facebook. So if you missed that, you can find that on our Facebook page. And tonight, we're proud that we are live on the National Audubon Society Facebook, the Hog Island Facebook, and our Zoom members. So welcome all of you for joining us tonight for our Making Bird Connections lecture. I think we're almost at the top of the hour, so we'll get started. My name is Eva Matthews-Lark. I'm the program manager of Hog Island Audubon Camp in Maine, and it's so great to have you joining us tonight. We host these Making Bird Connection lectures every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. These presentations are free, but donations are encouraged and help fund our programs. No amount is too small. The link can be found in the chat or the comment box. Also consider going to our website, hogisland.audubon.org, to check out our other online programs. This week, I'm very proud to present Jean Hall as our speaker. Jean will give us some insight into the world of photography and volunteering for our very own Project Puffin and Hog Island Audubon Camp. She's been volunteering for the past few years with us, and I can tell you without a doubt that her photography drives conservation and support for our programs and research. Thank you so much, Jean, for joining us tonight and for being here.
Hi, everyone. Can't tell you how excited I am to be invited to be part of this lecture series, because I love me some Hog Island and some Audubon. And my fervent wish is that I'll inspire a few of you to volunteer with a project you love, and especially to support conservation with your photographs if you're a photographer. I'm going to stop the share, Eva. It's not advancing.
Yeah, give it one more try, and
try again.
You may be able to do it with your keyboard too.
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to do it with the errors on my key. Okay, I'm going to try something else. Okay, we're back. So I'm going to give you an overview of a few of the projects that I volunteered for. Burrowing owls on Marco Island, also beach nesting seabirds on Marco Island. As Eva mentioned, Project Puffin and Hog Island camps, very, very close to my heart. The Delaware Shorebird project, and finally a Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation project that I was involved with. Like many nature photographers, my first love was definitely traveling to get pictures of charismatic megafauna. I went to Africa 3 times. I went to the Arctic to see polar bears. I've been to some extreme environments, but it's all been so worthwhile for me. However, my obsession with birds started in 2012. I'd always liked birds and I liked photographing them, but I never got the big bug the way many of us have. And it started with Nancy Ritchie, who back then was the environmental specialist for the city of Marco Island. And she had a handful of volunteers that every Friday morning would go out with her to post newly dug burrows that the burrowing owls had dug. Now and then we'd put up this PVC and rope, and it's symbolic posting. It's mainly to prevent the large tractor mowers that mow these empty lots on Marco from collapsing the burrow. It's not really to keep people out necessarily, it's to keep people back, but it's to keep the mowers from collapsing those burrows.
Jean, I don't think we have your screen sharing. Maybe you can try that again. We saw it earlier, so I think you just have to.
Do you know where it started from?
Um,
Are you seeing anything now?
I am seeing it now. That's great. We see the Florida Burrowing Owl now.
Okay, I'm going to try to go to presenter view. Let's see if that's what the problem is.
Great.
Are you good?
That looks great.
Okay, let's try it again. The Florida
Thanks.
Burrowing Owl is about the size of a softball. It's 7 to 10 inches tall. You can see the numbers, almost 9 ounces in weight. They mate for life. Their lifespan, unfortunately, is only 5 to 9 years old. And the Florida subspecies does not migrate. The ones out west, the burrowing owl out west, does migrate all the way up to Canada and down to Central America. And the Florida burrowing owl is state threatened. One thing that's so unique to the Florida subspecies is that they dig their own burrow. It can be up to 5 to 12 feet long and about 3 feet deep. The Western species, again, is very different. They don't dig their own burrows. They will take over prairie dog burrows and abandoned badger burrows. So as I said, I started with Nancy in 2012, and in 2015, she left the city. She went into a private business, and I went to the city of Marco, and they were like, meh, they didn't really want to take over the project. So my friend Carol Tennis, who is in that picture, she's right behind the cake on the left. She and I thought, well, we'll try to keep doing it. We'll buy our own posting materials. We'll go out and weed whack outside of nesting season. That's Carol in the picture. And the picture on the right is an example of what happens here in South Florida, even after 3 weeks of rain. That's how high the weeds get. So it's a constant process of weed whacking it down, because if you don't weed whack it down, the owls will then leave the burrow that's inside all those weeds, and they'll dig, as in the picture, he dug outside of the posting, and then we have to post the new one, and then it all starts up again. So in late 2015, Carol and I had been trying to keep this together for about 9 months. And I went to my friend Brad Cornell at Audubon of the Western Everglades, and I literally grabbed him by the collar and I said, you've got to help us, because 2 little old ladies and a couple of other of our volunteers can't keep up with 126 addresses with these posted burrows. We can't do all this weed whacking. It's just too much for us. And he took it to his board at Western Everglades, and Owl Watch was born. In the beginning, we only had about 20 volunteers. And again, we had about 126 addresses, and we gave them paper data sheets. It evolved into a monitoring protocol that they'd get a binder, they'd get a map. But once graduate student Allison Smith showed up to do her studies, her research on the burrowing owl, she switched us to Nest Story, which is now the volunteers have it in their phone. There's nothing paper anymore. It's really awesome. And Allie came in, she banded, she cut the upper left picture is how she would trap the burrowing owls. The whole process, usually once she trapped the owl, only took about 15 minutes. She would band them, she would measure them. And the adults, this is a pair of adults, would get a unique color combination on their bands, but the chicks only get a metal band on their leg, because just like with other bird species, mortality for that first year of life is pretty high. So those unique color bands are saved until they're recaptured as adults. That's a picture in the upper left of 2 of our volunteers who've actually been with us since the beginning. And it's now 5 years. This project has been going on. It's 2020. And remember, I said we had 126 burrow addresses when this started at the end of 2015, early 2016. And drum roll, these are our numbers right now this year. Pretty impressive. And we've got 404 addresses, which can be a challenge. And these are our monitors. This was training of this past season. It's just exploded. It's been so exciting. And we're so lucky to have so many volunteers. It's very gratifying. In 2018, Our project won the Audubon Florida Outstanding Conservation Project Award. We were pretty proud of that. And then this summer, Audubon magazine somehow caught wind of us and did a beautiful article on our project. It was written by Scott Weidensaw, one of my heroes and one of the most passionate authors, researchers of all things bird, and photographer Karen Agner, who is a Nat Geo and Audubon magazine photographer. That picture I took this past January. We were up on a 75-foot tower in the Brazilian rainforest watching a harpy eagle 12 hours a day. So she's pretty spectacular, and her pictures in this article are fabulous. So now I've caught you up on Owl Watch, which was, I guess, burrowing owls were almost my spark bird that got me crazy. In my second year of doing owls, Nancy Ritchie, who was then working for the city, said, you need to be a Florida shorebird steward. And I said, what's a Florida shorebird steward? And I thought, at that point, I thought shorebirds, are those egrets? I mean, I really didn't know anything. I went through training. And by the way, this is all the spots. I think this map is old, but this is how many shorebird monitoring project locations there are in Florida that Audubon Florida maintains, with many partners, by the way. And I learned through training that we would be educating the public. We'd let them look through scopes, look at the chicks, how cute they are, talk to them about how cryptically colored they are and that they hunker down on the beach. It's very easy to step on them. But at the same time, when I was doing my weekly shift out there, I started sending reports in because I was taking pictures. And I wanted to let them know about, for instance, violations, because dogs are never allowed on the Marco beaches at all year round. And during colony season, it has happened in the past that a dog will run through, and get the chicks. I also noticed some photographers who were getting too close. In that picture, he's pressed right up on the line, and there was a least turn with its chick, newly hatched, still wet, just below him, and the least turn was going nuts. It was flushing over and over. So, it was good to have pictures of that type of thing. Also, down here in Florida, I don't know if you guys have this, in other states, people run through the flocks to get pictures with their iPhone. It's really a problem that I wanted to document, and now a lot of different groups use those pictures. And I want to point out how much difference you can make as an individual. I didn't know this before I started volunteering. I really didn't think you could effect change. And this was just my first year of being a shorebird steward. I was out on my shift, and I took this picture of a crow in the distance. I didn't know what was going on. When I got home and looked at the pictures, the least turns were diving on it, were going crazy. And he's got a least turn chick, which is horrifying. I found out later that this picture went all over the state to different FWC offices. Audubon Florida shared it. And pretty quickly, FWC, along with Rookery Bay Research Reserve, brought pallets out to not only protect these young chicks that can't fly from predators, but it gives them shade during this, we're the face of the sun down here, the heat in Florida. So I was so shocked when I was told that was the instigator, just one picture that I put in a report, that it helped birds in some way. And my next year as a shorebird steward, we had problems with the line. At that point, FWC was using, one of the lower cost lines that was just twisted, and it's right next to the ocean. So it's wind and it's salt and it's sand. And I went out again on a shift. This was later in the season, but still there were chicks out there. And this is how much line I collected that had broken. It was wrapping around some of the stakes. It was flapping in the breeze. And unfortunately, I got that picture of an adult black skimmer that had gotten tied up in that loose string. So I put all that in my report, and The next year, it was the end of that season. The next year, they switched to a braided twine that stays up throughout the posting season. It's very strong, and we have a really happy colony because of that. You can see all the signs in the background in that shot. Then, now I'd been a steward, a shorebird steward for 2 years, and Audubon, Florida hired Hurricane Adam DeNovo to come down here. He's a seabird biologist, and they wanted him to be to run the Collier stewardship program and also do monitoring, etc. He's definitely a force of nature. He also teaches most years at Hog Island. Many of you may know him. And he'd only been here. He got here in April of 2015. He'd only been here a couple of months, and he said, come out to the colony because I think we've got a crow problem. And I came out, and he started saying, okay, you need to get pictures of all this. The crows were perching on the stakes of the posting that surrounded the colony, and they would drop down into the birds that some of them were incubating, and they literally would walk around, stomp around, and if they saw a skimmer or a least tern that was sitting, they would poke it in the butt until it stood up, and if there was an egg under it, it would grab it and fly off. And this was happening constantly. Adam said, take pictures, you need to put these in your reports. He said, this is bad. And literally 2 months later, 1,500 pairs of seabirds, our entire colony failed. But because of those, I'm told, because of my pictures going out there and repeatedly getting pictures of this horror, FWC did start managing crows. All the seasons passed. They go out and they eliminate a few crows, but corvids are so smart. They tell their buddies, and they don't have to do that many, and the crows stop. And in 2016 and 2017, we had the largest colony of black skimmers and least terns in the entire state. So that was very gratifying to see that happen too. We also, when you're a steward, you're out there with other species, and one of the ones we're supposed to watch out for is the Wilson's plover, which is pretty secretive in nesting season. And my advice to any photographers watching, always remember the best thing to do is to sit down and stay very quiet and just wait. You have to have patience. Don't push the birds. Sit still, let the birds come to you or not, because these poor Wilson plover parents, these chicks, the minute they're dry, they're out of the nest cup and foraging for themselves. And for the parents, it's like herding cats. So if you just sit there very calmly with your camera, very quietly, by the way, that chick is literally this big. That's how they're tiny. But if you sit there very quietly, things like this could happen. And it was, I almost was weeping. I'd been sitting there maybe for an hour, and suddenly this parent was fairly close to me, and all the chicks ran under the parent. So Adam came in 2015, and then in 2017, he started the first federally and state permitted banding project of black skimmers in Collier County. In fact, that picture on the upper right is the very first one he ever banded in Collier. And because of that banding project and others that he has introduced me to, now I'm a little bit obsessed with banded birds. I find that that's something you can get hooked on now that I've discovered that it's so important to research, and a lot is being learned by that. The picture on the close-up on the left, you'll see the green band is actually one of the birds that Adam banded on Marco Island. And the blue band is from New Jersey. So you start learning these things, which are pretty exciting, and sometimes the researchers write to you and they're very excited about the pictures. And again, because of Adam introducing me to this, I started noticing bands on other birds and started grabbing pictures, and usually he would report them for me. I was lazy, but these are the places that you as a photographer can report the birds on. It's not that hard when you see a band. And you can also go to this Facebook page. Even though it says Florida banded birds, A lot of the different researchers check in there. And if you post your picture and say, do you know where I should report this? A lot of times they know the biologists that actually banded it, and you can send them the pictures and your info. You always need the date and the location minimally. By the way, that bottom picture was on Marco, and that's an orange band, which indicates that in breeding plumage, that red knot, we don't get them very often here. That way they're on their way to the Arctic tundra. That red knot was banded in Argentina. How cool is that? They migrate about 18,000 miles a year. And again, because I've become aware of it, I was in the Galapagos a year ago, May. And when I started looking at my pictures, I found I had a few pictures of banded albatross, waved albatross, now called, I think, the Galapagos albatross. So I sent those, I kind of dug around and sent those off, and got an email back saying they were really excited to have some of the pictures. Also, Adam, Hurricane Adam, he showed up in 2015, and for that whole first year, he kept saying, you got to go to Project Puffin, you got to go to Project Puffin. And I said, okay. He said, you should take pictures for them. And he was making it sound like this is something easy. Usually, they don't really have a lot of volunteers that are out on the islands. It's just the biologists, the rotating biologists, also interns from other countries. But he said he was going to talk to them and see if he could get me on one of the islands. This has 4 decades, Project Puffin. Many of you may be familiar with it. Started by Dr. Steve Kress. And it's now, that book, that's his book, written by Derek Jackson and Steve Kress, which is a fabulous book. But I took this screenshot recently of a presentation by Dr. Don Lyons, who just who took over the project because Steve Kress just retired. And look at those numbers. I had to grab that to show that they are informing and helping with all these seabird colony restoration projects around the globe. And that includes not only techniques of how they banded them, the most important thing is that they taught them about social attraction, and they make these fabulous decoys at the Seabird Restoration Project, which is what Project Puffin is now called. That's an albatross by Sue Schubel, the awesome seabird Sue Schubel. So they use social attraction now, and this is spread around the world. I feel very lucky that I did get in 2016, and I was assigned to the mothership, Egg Rock. That's a picture of it. It's 7 acres out in the Atlantic. It's basically just a rock. And the way you arrive is they drive you out in a boat, and then one of the biologists comes out in a Zodiac and drives you back to shore. And by shore, I mean boulders covered with kelp, and you fling yourself onto the boulders. It's really slippery, and you've got all your gear, and if you've got cameras, and it's all their supplies are coming with you too, because they bring food and water and everything every couple of weeks. So that was interesting landing on Egg Rock. This is what it looks like. This is a fairly recent shot. That's the Egg Rock Hilton, which is really just a 1-room research cabin, because all of us, there's 5 bodies usually on the island in tents. I believe I took this just a couple of days after I arrived that first time in 2016. I've now gone 4 years. This was supposed to be my 5th year, but COVID. And there were 3,000 pairs of laughing gulls in the vegetation. I think it's since been managed. It's better, but these gulls would land on your tent all night long. That's the outhouse, by the way. That's the composting outhouse. But these gulls would land on the top of your tent and just scream at the top of their lungs all night long. I had earplugs in and everything, but it was that part was rough. And I had no idea they were going to hand me a pen or a pencil and a little logbook that I was supposed to take all these detailed recordings down of everything about how far you were when you saw a banded bird. These are field readable bands, which the metal ones are really hard to see. I wasn't good with the scope, and I started using my camera to do this. And that's when they started to realize, don't give her a scope. Just let her use her camera, and she can blow up the pictures and get the data off of that. This is an outside picture and an inside picture of the research cabin. There is some solar power during the day, which is mainly to just recharge like a few batteries and for their laptop. It's also, this is where we do any of our cooking. On the right side, you can't quite see it, but there's a little propane stove. It's very close quarters, but somehow these amazing biologists make it work. I also learned about grubbing for puffin chicks. That's Allie Smith again. That's where I met her, actually. She's the one that did the burrowing owl research. She's grubbed up a chick. And this is Charlie on Metinnicus Rock, who had a different technique. They all had different techniques. He was very lanky and had long arms, and he'd go way down and pull up chicks that way. And the reason they were doing that is because they would band the chicks. They would also, throughout the season, they would weigh and measure them repeatedly. Also on all 7 of the Project Puffin Islands, there are tern colonies, very robust tern colonies, which are something interesting to deal with. But when you're in the blind, you get to see scenes like that. The biologists do provisioning studies, which is what I would call feeding studies. They sit in blinds to see what their parents are flying in, what kind of fish, who's getting fed of the chicks. And I'm holding there an older and almost fledged common tern chick. I went out when they did one of the productivity plots where, again, they weigh, measure. The chicks are banded when they're still just tiny, because the biologists go out every day to these productivity plots so they know when eggs are getting ready to hatch. And they literally put the bands on their little legs then. This is a scene. I had a video in here to show you the pandemonium, the insanity of common terns. When you're making your way through this very narrow path through the vegetation. These are the biologists, they're headed for a productivity plot, but it's the same way going to the blinds. You have to look down constantly because there could be eggs or chicks of the terns laid literally on the path. So you're looking down, but at the same time, these birds are trying desperately, these common terns, to stab you in the brain. They're great little security force birds. And the biologists, I've learned, have all different methods of preventing their brain getting stabbed. This is Shannon, who was on Metinnicus Rock. She's got on a wool cap and a hood. This is Frank on Mat Rock. A lot of them used just a stick because the terns will hit whatever's the highest point on you. So they would just carry a stick when they were walking around the island, and the terns would dive into that. And this is my personal favorite. This is Cote from, I believe she was from Chile, on Egg Rock, and she's using tongue depressors on a hat. I did the same when I wore a tern hat. That's my favorite. They'll just hit the tongue depressors. Also on, at least on Egg Rock, and I believe several other ones, are lucky to have roseate terns, which are, and they're being banded too, which are endangered. And Arctic terns, look at those tail streamers, which migrate up to, I believe, more than 44,000 miles. I've heard 50,000 miles a year, 44,000 miles a year, and gorgeous, elegant bird, both of those terns. This is what a blind looks like. You're sitting on an upside down bucket on a boat cushion, but I think it's fabulous. I've heard people say they get bored. I go out more hours than they ask for resighting because I want to get more pictures, except midday when the sun is bad. But usually the biologists are going out at some point during the day, usually twice for 3 hours. But I think it's awesome. I love being in the blinds. And because of being in the blinds, once I've gotten some resight pictures and blown it up and written everything down, I could kind of concentrate on what else was happening. So I try to get some fun pictures for the project. For instance, this one, the bird on the right actually has a metal field readable band on it. And I love the setting. Obviously, that that pair was billing. And I entered this one, and I'm going to pump a little about what Sabine will talk about. I entered it in the Audubon Photography Awards. I didn't win anything, and it didn't get the top 100. However, they have used it since for one of the luggage tags they send to members. I was beside myself over that, and they used it for a Christmas card one year. And again, this was just from entering it into their annual photography awards. It just makes my heart swell up when I realize that Audubon is using some of my photos. They also, Dr. Steve Kress, that first year wrote an article on the redfish. The Gulf of Maine is one of the fastest warming bodies of water globally from climate change. And I think I've got this right. The herring and the hake were going deeper and deeper, too deep for the puffins to get that year. But the good news is, because of fisheries management, the redfish were up higher. And so I had a few pictures that I sent after I did my stint on Egg Rock. And this is two different puffins with a bunch of redfish in their bill. And that article that he wrote was mailed out to a whole bunch of Audubon supporters. So again, you get those ego strokes just from having your pictures used, but you're helping conservation. And I think it was my second year, I'd been on Egg Rock and Matinicus Rock, and everybody kept yapping about Hog Island. You need to sign up for one of the Hog Island camps. It's amazing. You're going to love it. You're around all these people, all these biologists that have done global research on birds, and the setting is it's almost spiritual, and the food is incredible. And they kept saying this to me for these years. And so I did sign up, and it is magical. You get to do all these amazing, I shouldn't use amazing so much, all of these remarkable excursions when you sign up for any of their camps, whether it's hiking or this picture below is during arts and birding, and they were studying a setting, these artists that they were painting. And this silly little squirrel, I was just waiting for the dinner bell to ring, and it was just out on the lawn. You are so surrounded by beauty and nature and good vibes and happiness. You fall into joy when you go to Autobahn, the Hog Island Audubon camps. It's just, I can't say enough about it. And please shoot them a couple of bucks at the end of the presentation if you like it, because conservation groups are hurting. These pictures, a few pictures I took from different camps I photographed for them. This was Raptor Camp. That's Rob Beauregard. And that's Holly Merker, my buddy, on the right during migration camp. And this again is arts and birding. They have all different types of media of arts. They also have photographer Derek Jackson that I mentioned before, wrote the book with Dr. Kress, Project Puffin, and he's an acclaimed photographer. And every night at Arts and Birding Camp, they have a salon where these extremely talented artists, they knock this type of thing off in a few hours during the day, and then at night, everybody can walk around with a little glass of wine and look at what they've accomplished that day. And they also have a photo salon. I was very impressed with these camps. And because I've been there, and I think I swamped Eva the first year probably with photos. Luckily now she says, we'd like you to come and photograph camps. But now on the National Audubon site, if you click on Hog Island, they're using one of my pictures of Eric pushing the dory out. So again, it's good for my ego, but I'm just happy that it's helping conservation. Another project I worked on, Delaware Shorebird project. Did that for 2 years. I was supposed to go this year, but COVID. Each May, an international team of scientists shows up at this one spot for only 1 month. That's it. And they are from Japan, China, Australia, the UK. And this is why. Just for the month of May, tens of thousands of migrating shorebirds stop for a month to try to fatten up. These little guys are on their way up to the Arctic to breed and make babies, and they've got to get fat for that long trip. And the reason they stop here is because of horseshoe crab eggs. It's truly a spectacle of nature watching this. The horseshoe crabs spawn only at this time of year in a couple of spots along their migration path. And now I hope you can tell from this picture, this is a friend, Andrew Baksh, that was out there reciting on one of the beaches. I'm behind him. I'm sitting very low and very quiet, doing the same thing he is. That's a carpet of shorebirds around him. And they came, those shorebirds were all the way back to me. You're trying so hard to just be quiet because they are jumpy. If you just sneeze, they're in the air. We're trying to get these pictures. Look at that carpet. We're trying to capture pictures of recites of bands. And that blue band on a red knot means Brazil. It was banded in Brazil. I still get carried away with all this. About every 3 days, they also have what's called a catch, where they use cannon nets. And that's Jackie Clark lying down. She was lying down for hours. She's on a walkie-talkie. She's telling them exactly when there's enough birds in there, and there's no birds near the projectile. There's the projectile, and then boom, a big cannon shoots out, and all the biologists run out and they cover the birds to keep them quiet, to keep them shady. Then they very quickly, it's like military maneuvers, they very quickly erect this tent, and they have these little pods that are each the same, with 4 or 5 different people who are doing all the measurements, weighing, wing cord, and putting on bands. And this is Nigel Clark and his wife, who are world-renowned wash waders. They travel the world banding, especially threatened shorebird species. That's one of the little pods. Everyone has an assignment, and you just do the same thing with each one. And while you're out there waiting for the cannon nets to go off, or if you're reciting, this type of, again, magic happens when you least expect it. You're just wallowing in birds. You're just surrounded by birds. And besides that magic, sometimes you capture, this was the DuPont Nature Center, where they were setting up the processing that year for some reasons, and there were kids at the Nature Center. They were letting them release birds. And I'm telling you that changes your life. Once you've held a bird and felt its beating heart. Look at that little boy's face. Now this picture, I'm sure all of you, I did not take this, but it's a lead up. You know about these horrible fires that are happening out west. I was very lucky to be able to photograph Andrew Stillman's PhD project. He was studying the black-backed woodpecker in a pyrodiverse habitat, and what it meant not only for the black-backed woodpecker, but for other species. And he was very involved with forestry throughout. He's still working on his doctorate. He would put little backpacks on the fledglings, and then using telemetry, he would track them for months and months and months. I believe he even went up a couple of times in a plane. I was only out there with him for a week, but you can read this. It demonstrated that this woodpecker uses pyrodiverse habitat at different stages, and it ended up making a difference in how they do manage forests out there. He wrote to me, I think it was a year ago, and said, Jean, your pictures are being used in Newsweek because they interviewed me for an article. So see again, just because I went out there, because he's such a great guy and I wanted to get him some project pictures, just because of that, I ended up having a somewhat, it's an ant picture, but whatever. I was just so excited. And this is a quote from him about how important this information is to manage and restore fire-prone forests. He's everyone I've worked with is so wonderful and so giving and so generous. And my final project I'm going to talk to you about was in 2016. Florida Fish and Wildlife undertook an unprecedented effort to create more critical wildlife areas, CWAs, throughout the state. It was very quickly put together, and they asked me if I would travel the state taking pictures to show the 7 commissioners at one of their meetings. The chairman said probably these commissioners had never set foot anywhere near shorebirds or critical wildlife areas. And in the 20 years before this big project, only two had been established, 2 critical wildlife areas. And the chairman of FWC was attempting to establish 15. So here's a map of all the places that I drove, except for the Withlacoochee Caves. I didn't go there because what am I going to do in the dark? I'm not good with lights. But I went to all the other places and got them pictures. And man, did everybody mobilize. They had aquatic preserves. They had FWC, Rookery Bay Research Reserve, Audubon, Florida. So many different people mobilized to get me out, because several of them were quite remote, and a lot of them you had to go by boat to get to. And they wanted to help. They wanted to make this project happen. This is just an example of one of them, because it was, I think, my favorite. It's this tiny little shoal in the Gulf of Mexico. And it's also one of my favorites because it's the only picture I have of a long-billed curlew. But it's a beautiful little vulnerable spot that has lots of different species of nesting birds. So I did make a presentation. I think I only traveled for maybe 2 months driving around the state, and it was almost out of nesting season. Anyway, I made my presentation in September, and then in the middle of November, I went back up to their meeting that they listened to the public. Believe it or not, a lot of people come out and push back against this. But here in Florida, we listen more to the public than we do to scientists. I'm just saying. So I wanted to hear the vote. I was told it was going to be split, that we'd be lucky if it got passed because of the pushback from, as you see, fishermen, eco-operators, and even some wildlife photographers who want to be able to go over every inch. These critical wildlife areas have at times posting so no one can enter. Duh. Anyway, the vote was unanimous. We thought it was going to be split. We would barely make it, and it was unanimous. That's the little flag again, another picture of Flag Island that I love so much. This is a picture on that day, me with the then chairman, who was an amazing man who now is on private work in Montana. And I took that picture, I think, at Flag also. But I wanted to get a picture with him before he left. And that's a quote from him about how important these tiny pin dots on the coast that we need to protect. We've got so much development in Florida. And this is to leading up to Sabine. Again, one of my pictures that I sent into Audubon Photography Awards and didn't win anything and didn't get in the top 100, but they used it for almost a year as the background photo for the brown pelican. Now they're using different ones, but I got a screenshot. And the Burrowing Owl, again, didn't win anything. But I get to see this kind of thing and know that Audubon is using photos to raise awareness. This photo, which was not taken coastally, it was taken at St. Augustine Alligator Farm, did get me into the top 100. It's the one time I got into the top 100. But I'm thrilled with everything they've done. I just am throwing this in at the end, because this only happened in the last few weeks. Now, FWC, their marine unit, lets me know. That's a good friend and biologist down here, Brittany Piersma, on the left. They're doing a gender roll to check what sex this manatee is. It was tidally stranded because of too little water. Don't worry, all these strandings that happened in the last few weeks were tidal. All the manatees got out. But they're now using my pictures for a lot of their work at the Marine Mammal Rescue. So I don't know how that's going to unfold. But once again, it's so exciting to know this is pushing forward. I see articles now with the pictures, and I don't get many pictures of me in the field. And Haida Herring took that picture on the latest manatee rescue. So in closing, I want to tell all of you, find your passion, share your gift, whatever it is. You've got to share it with others and hopefully educate others about what you do love. And I especially hope that many of you decide to volunteer and to make your patch of the globe a better place, because you can always take photos for conservation efforts also if you love birds and nature. And I'm just going to leave you with that quote from Margaret Mead that's one of my favorites. And now I believe Sabine is going to take over.
Thanks, Jean, so much for sharing all of your work with those projects. And don't forget, everyone out there watching, we will have some time for questions. So drop those in the comment section or the chat box so that we can ask Jean even more questions about how she is furthering conservation through her photography. Next, our Bird Connection presenter is Sabine Meyer. Sabine is the photography director for the National Audubon Society. She's worked for a range of publications and organizations, including National Geographic Adventure, Condé Nast Traveler, New York Magazine, Time, the list goes on and on. Her photo editing has earned numerous accolades. We are so proud to have Sabine here. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure. I thank you for the invitation. I'm thrilled. I do want to start by saying, boy, it's going to be a tough act to follow after Jean. I am also extremely thrilled to have seen all this great work she's been producing. I want to acknowledge how important and critical the work she's doing is, you know, and thank her for her passion, her photography contribution, and all the support she's been given to Audubon and the birds. So thank you. Without further ado, Jean has been talking quite a bit about volunteering through the lens. I am going to spend the next 10 to 15 minutes focusing on conservation through the lens. So I, hold on, I think I need to go to, what do I do here? I need to go to presenter. Eva, can you make me?
Yeah, we can see your screen, Sabine. I think you just need to put it in presenter mode.
All right. Wait, no, not that. Hold on. I just want to go to play from current slide. Can everybody see? Great. Are we on? All good? Excellent. So like I said, you know, we're going to shift the focus a little bit and talk about conservation through the lens. And basically that means, you know, talking about bird and bird photography as a tool to engage and advance Audubon's mission. It's pretty clear from what we just heard through Jean's presentation that photography is the one most important tool that we can use and that we use at Audubon to engage, promote. Basically, we have sort of our greater purpose is really to create change, and we want to use photography to make that happen. So how do we do that? Oops. Here we go. We tell stories, and we tell stories about birds. What we do is we have many platforms to tell these stories. We have a magazine. This magazine, Audubon magazine, has been around for since the 1940s. We publish 4 times a year. Each issue has a cornucopia of long features, smaller stories, you know, very actionable how-to items. Most of the stories we tell are about birds, their conservation status. We are focusing on some up-to-date, very unique research projects. We are focusing on the environment and the habitats that birds need to thrive and the challenges they faced with. We have produced special issues on climate. We feature researchers who do cutting edge research on particular bird species. The list goes on and on. Each of these issues is featured on our website. If you click on the magazine tab, you can actually go to every one of these specific issues. This is sort of some of my favorites from the last few months. Our Audubon Photo Awards here. This is the most recent is a special feature on, on the region honeyeater and its endangered status in Australia. We've done stories about the bird trade, the illegal bird trade in Florida. This story here at the bottom right, we followed the Chinese crested tern, which is one of the most endangered species in China. So all these stories can be read on our magazine. Maybe you can share the link to the magazine tab on Autobahn.org. Like Jean said, one of my favorite stories of all time was the story on Marco Island and these super cute owls. We commission our photography in the magazine. We also go to photographers who have great stories and say, hey, can we publish your pictures? We want to tell the story. The goal is really to inform and engage and draw awareness to particular issues and particular species. Here's our Chinese crested tern. Photographer was Morgan Heim. We've also stayed close to home and just published a portfolio on the American dipper, which is the only North American aquatic bird and is quite an amazing species. Mike Forsberg took these photos. He's based in Nebraska. This is one of my all-time favorites, the Snail Kite. Max Stone did a big project that we published a few years ago. It was shot on Lake Okeechobee in Florida. We've also featured stories about reintroduction of specific species. This was the northern bald ibises in Vienna in a zoo where the zoo staff was literally raising 24/7 these birds and then taking them on planes to teach them how to fly again in the wild. Another favorite, American flamingos in the Bahamas, and photographed by Melissa Brew. So we tell a lot of stories. These stories are all available in our magazine, but they're also available on our website, where we expand on visuals. There's more bird photography, more exciting features like videos, sometimes with graphics that are animated. All this to really push out the issues that we care about and more information about birds. So we don't only tell stories with our bird photography, we also advocate for the birds, and that's where we we use a whole sort of bag of tools. Photography is basically the number one tool we use. That's on everything. We use it on the homepage of our website to ask our supporters to donate here, for instance, to protect the Tongass National Forest. We create press releases on our website that feature photography in a really prominent fashion. We want to drive home the issue and associate each particular issue we care about and we fight for and associate that with an iconic image. And we want that to have a lasting impression on our viewers. We use photography in a way that is going to grab our viewers' attention. We send a lot of emails through our action center. We ask people to sign petitions, volunteer, write letters, donate. Our social media create a lot of engagement and also always use photography as the main driver. We basically want the photography to drive our audience to action. And point in case, very much what Jean showed us, a lot of her photography and pictures created actual change. And that's, we're hoping that photography is one of the tools that we have at Audubon at our disposal to create change. So we tell stories about birds with photography. We advocate for birds and try to push our priorities, but we also really want to share the love of birds because if you get moved by a picture, if you get moved by a story, maybe you'll pick up the phone and say, hey, I want to volunteer, I want to donate, I want to call my legislators and help for and ask for change. In order to sort of share this love of birds, we've created a couple of platforms that have been extremely successful, and one of them is the Audubon Photography Awards that Jean mentioned. We launched the awards in 10 years ago. It's been incredibly successful. It's created an amazing community. Every year we get around 8,000 submissions. We assemble a panel of judges, of sort of expert in different fields, photography included, and we labor over all these photos and come up with winners and honorable mentions. This was this year's grand prize winner. I'm just going to cycle through some of my favorites here while I talk. The awards platform has been a tool that's really been helpful to help cultivate a deeper engagement with the communities out there of bird photographers who submit images, who tell us how enthusiastic they are at getting their images just into the photo awards, even if some of them write to us saying it's a privilege to be part of it, even if we don't win anything. Of course, we're thrilled when we can elevate some of our contributors to top 100. We create a lot of different photo galleries around the photo awards, that we publish online on our website. They are sometimes, they're often focusing on behavior, on bird food rituals, on mating rituals, on birds in sort of interesting environments. The whole platform becomes obviously a story. The winners are published in the magazine. The winners are published on our website. A lot of the media in the US and internationally picks up the photography and the winners. So that's another way for us to promote the work we do. For 2021, we have some exciting news. We are creating a new category and we're creating an additional prize, but I'm not at liberty to tell quite yet. We will announce these in the late winter, probably around December. So overall, the photography awards have been an incredible tool to share, the sort of love of birds, the enthusiasm of a lot of the photographers for bird photography, and also has helped us elevate some of the conservation stories related to some of the species we are highlighting in the awards, some of them being winners or honorable mentions. So yes, there's too many great photos. It's really hard to pick a number. A lot of them can be seen on Autobahn.org on our photo awards silo. You can maybe share that. Eva, the top 100 also. And there's numerous galleries in the Audubon Photo Awards section of the website. To spread the joy of birds this year, because we have not been able to create our regular traveling photo exhibits, we created this really awesome virtual exhibit. So this is a virtual photo gallery where we have, quote unquote, virtually installed the winners and the honorable mentions of our photo award, and you can visit it online. That link also, if I could share that in the chat. It's really a cool feature, and it's real fun to navigate. Couple of more things that I wanted to go through quickly. I know we're a little tight on time. Another platform we just created to share the love of birds is the Bird from Home project. So in March, COVID hit, all our bird photographers already all of a sudden started calling us saying, oh my God, I'm not traveling, I don't have work, what can we do? And we decided to launch this project, ask 4 photographers, actually 3 photographers around the country to spend a few weeks photographing birds around their house. If they were unable to leave their homes through the windows, sort of stay close to home and see what they came up with. So we got a portfolio from Morgan Heim, who's based in Portland. I'm sorry, in Oregon. I can't remember, in Astoria, Oregon. We also hired George McKenzie Jr., who's based in Brooklyn, who walked around his neighborhood and gave us a great portfolio of images, as well as Napadal Powong, who's based in Missouri. All 3 photographers are featured on our website in the Bird from Home portal. The project was so successful, we got so much traffic online that we decided to sort of create an open call for the general public to submit photos on Instagram with the hashtag Bird from Home. We got 8,000 submissions. Our photo editor, Leah, did an amazing job at culling a gallery of 50 favorites that can also be seen online. This is one of them. And really goes to show that a lot of people got very excited about this Bird from Home project and really cared and slowed down and enjoyed birds. And we heard a lot of comments as to, this is sort of helping through the pandemic. This is giving us hope. This is a window into something hopeful. I know Jean talked about this a little bit. I just wanted to close with another really critical element of the work we do. Bird photography is critical to our conservation work, but it's all the more important that all of us photographers, photo editors respect birds. So we have created an online resource to help us, to help guide us, all of us, as well as photographers, through best practices and ethical and guidelines to ethical bird photography. So Jean was talking about this. We want to make sure that photographers are not scaring birds by getting too close, flushing them. We talk about what's the best way to photograph nests, how to photograph owls, and when and not to use flash. When is it ever okay to bait? No, but can you offer food? Is photographing a bird at a bird feeder baiting? So our online our online guide to ethical bird photography is really thorough. It spells out a lot of these guiding principles. We have a number of articles that are how-tos and explain in details what's to do, what's sort of the right approach to not only taking a great picture, but taking an ethical picture. With this one kind of most important principle, which is the welfare of the bird is always paramount. One should be walking away from a great photo if the bird's health and welfare is endangered. So that, that's something to always keep in mind. So there you go. Thank you so much. This was a bit of a quick overall view, but I am turning it over to you and questions.
Thank you so much, Sabine, for sharing all of that work that National Audubon Society is doing. And thank you to both of you for being here tonight. I also want to thank all of you out there watching. We're able to do programs like this because of you and your donations to Hog Island. So thank you so much. We will open up to questions, but before that, one little plug. If you go over to the Hog Island Audubon Camp Instagram, Jean Hall is going to have a takeover this week. We are going to be sharing photos from all of her conservation volunteer work that she highlighted tonight. You don't have to have an Instagram to view the photos each day. You can go to instagram.com/Hog Island Autobahn all together. And then for those who have Instagram, definitely start following us and check out Jean's photography on the takeover this week. But now let's turn to your questions. Don't forget to drop those in the comment and chat box. We already have a few lined up, and we'll start with a question for, well, we can ask both of you actually. What came first, photography or the birds?
For me, it was, I started with the big mammals. So it was photography, it was nature photography came first and then the birds.
I have to say that for me it was the reverse. Photography came first. When I got the call to come and talk to Audubon for this position, I said, but wait, I'm not a birder. I know nothing about birds. So I have learned a lot. I'm battling with squirrels and I have a baffle now on my feeder. So I'm enjoying birds tremendously, and I'm trying to share as much as possible the love of birds in my circles. I come from a background of photojournalism and documentary photography, focusing on, you know, human rights and international affairs. So it's a very different type of photography, but conservation photography is really critical. Also, it's to me, it's as important as all the other genres. So, and birds are becoming a bit of a passion.
Great. Our next question would be probably for you, Sabine. It says, is a cell phone photo adequate for publication?
A cell phone photo, it can be adequate for publication. You know, what we're looking for is quality enough that we can publish it at a decent size and it's sharp. So I know the new cell phones that are you know, coming out have amazing cameras, and you know, the quality of the imagery is pretty high. You know, we're constantly looking for expanding who can submit photos to the photo awards, who can shoot and what we can shoot and how we can shoot from our magazine. The truth of the matter is, you know, photo equipment is expensive. So being able to welcome phone photos and bird phone photos is something we're looking forward to. The big question is, you know, can you actually publish a spread photo in the magazine? It's got to be 300 DPI and it's got to be at least, you know, 16 to 18 inches wide by 12 inches tall. So you know, we want to make sure that the text side of that file that comes out of the phone is good enough to publish big. But you know, the technology is getting better and better. If it's an awesome picture, it doesn't matter. And the quality is good. It doesn't matter if it's taken on a phone or with the most expensive camera.
Great, thanks. Our next question, Jean, is about the Shorebird Steward program. One of our watchers asks, is that a program that's throughout the state of Florida? Do you know any details?
It is throughout the state of Florida. And I think, did you publish the link to the Audubon? Okay. And they can go there and see, like I had the map of all the little flags. They can send information, but it's all over. It's not so much on the lower East Coast around Miami. I believe there's maybe one group over there, but otherwise it's all over the Gulf Coast and some in the Northeast too.
So for those tuning in from Southeast Florida, you should start volunteering. And I'm sure, you know, all of these components probably started at a grassroots level with individuals who are passionate. Our next question is about camera equipment. What do you use? And as a second question, what's a good way to get started if you don't want to spend a lot of money? What's a good way to get started in photography?
I wonder if Sabine would maybe think this too, to start out with a point and shoot. It doesn't have to have interchangeable lenses in the beginning. I don't know if she feels the same way. I started out with a point and shoot many, like 4 decades ago. It was a little, I can't even remember which, was it Olympus? And it zoomed maybe to 200 millimeters, but I got a few things done. When it was film, I was a Nikon girl, but I've been a Canon girl always in digital. And I actually I've been a 5D Mark III, 7D too, but I just bought my first mirrorless literally like 2 days ago, and I've been practicing with it. It's a big learning curve, but I'm a Canon girl. Nikon, Canon, very equal, and Sony now is fabulous. So you don't have to spend a lot of money. You don't have to spend a lot of money. You just need to get out there with some form of camera and really study the birds. Just sit down and stare at them. Just sit down and learn their behavior. That's how you get your best pictures.
Yeah, I totally second that, Jean. I full disclosure, I'm not a photographer. I'm not technical. My skill is in building stories and photo editing. But I think studying the bird behavior, knowing everything you can know about that bird, and also patience, and kind of making sure that you care about the bird rather than the picture first. I think a good suggestion also for camera equipment these days is to look at secondhand cameras. There's, the technology changes so fast. There's a number of secondhand cameras that are probably available that you can get as your skill progresses to up your game. But, I think the camera is one thing, the eye and the composition and the knowledge that you're witnessing an amazing behavior, that's worth at least also 50, if not more, % of the picture.
I totally agree with what she said. Totally agree. You need to fall in love with the birds that you're trying to get a picture of.
Our next question is for you, Jean. You shared so many amazing projects that you volunteer for. What is the hardest as far as, conditions, weather? What's the hardest of?
Oh, that would be Egg Rock.
Should I even have asked?
That would be Project Puffin. It's brutal is a tough word, but it's challenging, but man, is it worth it. And I miss it so much. This summer, it was killing me. It gets into your blood, as I'm sure you understand.
As a follow-up question, how do you keep your camera equipment dry and safe in bad weather?
I use different raincoats for them. I get the simplest ones, and you can actually just use a plastic bag. You can cut a hole in a Ziploc, and there's very reasonably priced rain jackets that just sort of Velcro around it. Also, I've got a friend, I just tried this recently. She bought a big poncho, and it's a really nice one from a travel group that has straps and everything. And you just get under the poncho with the lens and the camera under it. You have a hat here and the camera is here, but the whole poncho is over it. And a lot the pro model cameras are theoretically rainproof. I never trust it, but that's what they say, is that they are waterproof.
Can I just jump in quickly?
Yeah,
I don't really have any technical tips to contribute, but what I want to say is we too seldom see great pictures of birds taken in adverse weather. It's, there's this idea that the perfect bird photo will be in a beautiful location with beautiful weather. And we're always thrilled, including your picture, Jean, of the burrowing owl with the rain, to see a bird in snow, in rain. We always wonder, where do birds go when it rains? Where do they go when there's a windstorm? So I mean, obviously, as the photographer, you want to be safe, you want to make sure the bird is safe, but these type of photos in adverse weather are welcome, and they kind of, you know, they just show more of the sort of the swing of life. You know, birds aren't just hanging out in beautiful places when the sun is shining. So just want to say we want to see more of these.
I so agree. I got to give that tip, that just what Sabine said, I love photos in the rain. And here's a tip to all you photographers. Everyone disappears from the boardwalk when it starts raining. If you just pull your poncho over you, the tripod, just stand there, because exquisite things happen in the rain, especially just as it starts raining and just as it's finishing, because the birds get very active and throwing off rain droplets, but all the humans disappear. So you are by yourself with the bird in the rain.
So what advice do you have for someone who is a photographer and wants to help support an organization?
I was trying to think, it was all very organic for me. You know, if I met someone who, like the Burrowing Owls, I actually made a book of my pictures of the Burrowing Owls before I ever met Nancy Ritchie, and I left it at City Hall for her. And she called me and said she loved the pictures. Do I want to be a volunteer? And look what's happened ever since then. If you just, just look around, see what type of conservation groups are around, and email them. Are you guys interested in having any of your project work documented? And just remember, don't be too eager. This is not to get you into a better spot. Sometimes that does happen because you're out there with biologists, but that's not why you're doing it. That can be an offshoot benefit, but you're doing it because you want to get pictures of the project and help birds, and then good things will come to you because of that.
I agree. That's the right approach. I think you can also think about, you know, aside from my photography, what else can I contribute? You know, do I have a special expertise? Do I, you know, can I write? Am I good at social media? What else can I help with aside from my photography? And, you know, kind of do an audit of what the photography landscape is for that organization. What are they already doing? What are they missing? Kind of be a little strategic, if you will, so that you're really helping, you know, instead of being redundant with some of the photography. It's not about getting access to be able to produce photos so you have the photos. It really, as you said, Jean, it's about the package. You know, you want to help, and then yes, good things will happen in return.
I really liked your point that you made earlier, Jean, about, you know, find your passion and then use that to volunteer, because it is true. So many Audubon chapters and environmental organizations and education centers definitely need all types of people. So if photography is what you're good at, then that's certainly an avenue. But if you're a gardener or you like to clean, we always need people at Hog Island every summer to volunteer, even doing some of those type of tasks. So I think, you know, wonderful advice, and certainly I hope you've inspired some people on our talk today. To wrap things up, I just wanted to remind you guys that next week we'll be taking a hiatus for the upcoming election. Remember, the birds can't vote, but you can. But I do hope you will join us on Tuesday, November 10th for a special presentation about Indigenous conservation from Audubon's Boreal Conservation Vice President, Jeff Wells. We're very excited to have him join us in 2 weeks. So we'll take next week off, but we're so excited that you are all able to join us tonight. Thank you so much, Jean, for all of your volunteer work and for sharing your skills and your passion tonight. And Sabine, thank you so much for letting everyone know what's happening at National Audubon Society. Everyone, thanks, and I hope you have a great night.